Okay, so today we are going to be doing lesson 1-4, which is all about literal equations. Literal equations are just like formulas or regular equations, but you're not going to see a ton of numbers. It's going to be mostly letters. We can solve them exactly like we do regular equations though. If it makes it easier, we're going to set up a do-undo table. I'll show you what this is. So for our first equation right here, m divided by n plus 4 equals p. We need to see what is happening to m because that's what we're going to solve for. So you want to look at what operations, multiplication, subtraction, division, addition, all of those operations, what's happening to it. You want to go um, start with whatever's closest to M and then work out from there. You can also look at it as PEMDAS, order of operations, and just go in order. So the first thing that's happening to M over here, we don't have parentheses, we don't have exponents. It says M divided by N, so we have division. So it's dividing by N, and then it's got a plus 4 out to the side. That's the do. That's what's happening to it right now. To undo it, to solve for M, we're going to work up this side of the table. And we're going to, sorry, this is written upside down. We're going to undo what happened. So instead of plus 4, we're going to subtract 4, which is what they did over here. And then instead of, and then it cancels out your 4 minus 4, leaves you with m over n, and then it subtracts 4 to the other side, so p minus 4. And then instead of dividing n, we're going to cancel it out by multiplying. So n times that whole fraction will cancel out your n, leave you with m, and then we multiply n on the other side. Now it's in parentheses because we have to multiply it by everything. So you can, anytime you have parentheses, you can write these two ways. You can leave it in parentheses, n times that whole parenthesis p minus 4, or you can distribute it out. N times p is np, and n times negative 4 is negative 4n. So you can write it either way. It's completely up to you. So let's try this one. So we want to solve this equation for x. We're going to look at our x and make a do-undo table. See what's happening to x. Start with your order of operations or start with whatever is closest to x. We have an a, that's a times x, so it's multiplying by a. And then we have this plus by out to the side. The undo side, we just do the opposite. Instead of plus by, we're going to subtract by, and we just work our way up the table. So I'm going to write it again over here. So instead of plus by, we're going to subtract by to the other side. It'll cancel it out on this side. We just bring down our ax, and then we subtract it over here, c minus by. There's never really going to be a lot to combine on these. There will be a little bit, but most of the time you're just going to write it out. You're not going to have to combine any like terms for the most part. Then instead of multiplying a, the opposite of that is division. So we're going to divide a. And we're going to divide it on both sides. So it'll cancel out on the left and leave us with x. And then on the right, we can't simplify this or anything because they're just letters. So we just write it all down. And that is it. We're just getting everything in terms of x. We want x to be all by itself. Okay, we can do the same thing over here. Even if there's numbers in it, it doesn't matter if there's numbers or letters. We can do the same do-undo table. We want to solve for x. So the first thing with x is that 3. That's 3 times x. So we multiply by 3. And then out to the side, we have this plus 6y. So to undo, we're going to work from bottom to top. Instead of plus 6y, we're going to subtract 6y. instead of multiplying 3, we're going to divide 3. So we can do those steps over here. So we're going to subtract 6y. So it'll cancel out your 6y. 9z minus 6y, you cannot combine these because they're not like terms. They're not the same letter. So we just have to write them out here. 9z minus 6y. And then we're going to divide by 3. Now I'm going to divide it by each one of them individually because it's numbers. Numbers we can simplify just like you would in a regular equation. So 9 divided by 3 gives us 3z, and 6 divided by 3 gives us that minus 2, and bring down your y. So if you have numbers, we can simplify them. If you have letters, we can't always. That's why I left this one as a full fraction, and I separated that up into pieces because they would simplify. You just have to look at what you're given. If you're given numbers, make sure you simplify them. Okay, on D, we want to solve in terms of A. So we want to solve for A, get A all by itself. So we're going to make our do, undo table. What's happening to A first? What's with it? Well, it's divided by C. That's what those fractions are. And then out to the side, we have a plus B. So to undo it, we're going to work it backward. Instead of plus B, we're going to minus B. Instead of dividing C, we're going to multiply C. So let's write it out to the side. So we're going to minus B, just like we said in our table. We'll bring down A over C. And then we have D minus B. We can't combine them because they're not the same letter. They're not like terms, so we just write them out beside each other. To get rid of C, we're going to multiply C. Now you have to multiply it by the entire piece on the right side. So you can write this one of two ways. You can leave it in parentheses like the example at the top, or we can distribute it. And we can do C times D, which is CD, and C times negative B, which is negative BC. So you can get either one of these answers. They're both 100% correct. And you could see either one on a test or quiz or state test or anything like that. You can see either one of these answers. Okay, for E, make our do undo table. We want to solve for B. So what happens to B first? Well, up at the top with it, we have a plus A. It's adding A. And then you got the C at the bottom. All those fractions are going to be division. So it divides by C. So we want to undo. Instead of dividing by C, we're going to multiply C. Instead of adding A, we're going to subtract A. So I'll write my full equation over here so y'all can see. So like I said, we're going to multiply C, work your way up. If you multiply C, it'll cancel out. And we multiply it to the other side. So D times C is CD. Most of the time you're going to see these in alphabetical order. So that's why I switched it to CD instead of DC. And then instead of plus A, we're going to subtract that A to get it out of the way. So minus A. So these are all different numbers, all the different letters, so we can't combine them. So we just have to bring it down. CD minus A. And that is it. As long as the letter you're solving for is by itself, you're good to go. So y'all can pause this video at any time and try one of these on your own before I work it out for you. So pause this one right now and try to solve F. Try to do your do undo table. Okay, if we make our do undo table, I hope you paused it and tried it by yourself. We want to solve for V. So what's happening with V right now? Well, V is on the bottom, so it's actually being divided. It's not dividing M, it's dividing V. So we need to get it out of the bottom of the fraction. To do that, since it's divided by, we're going to multiply by v. Even though it's the letter we're solving for, it can't be in the bottom of a fraction. So we're going to multiply it out of the way. So it'll cancel out of the fraction. And then v times p is just vp, or pv. It does not matter. Then we have this v times p. So this is kind of like a two-step. So v times p, we need to get rid of that times p. So we're going to divide p. So v equals m over p. We can't simplify it because they're different letters. If it was numbers, we could, but with letters, we can't. So that is it. Okay, for G, we want to solve for A. So if we make our do, undo table, what's happening to A right now? Well, it's up top all by itself, so there's no addition or subtraction up top, but it's divided by this whole piece on the bottom. Sometimes it's going to have big pieces with it. It does not matter if it's multiple letters or one letter. You can divide out the, it's dividing the entire piece on the bottom. So to undo it, we're going to multiply by that entire piece. We can't take it one piece at a time. We have to take the whole bottom out. Let me write it over here. So we're going to multiply by c plus x. Get rid of all of that. And multiply it over here. C plus x. So this cancels out, so we're left with a. And then over here, just like we did in the past couple problems on the example and on D over here, you can write it two ways. You can leave it in the parentheses, or you can distribute it out. Y times C would be CY if you put it alphabetically, and then Y times X would be XY. So CY plus XY. So you can write it either one of these ways. You do not have to write it both ways. Just pick the one that you like and stick with it. Again, you could see either one of those on your test, so make sure you're familiar with both of them. Okay, on the back of our resource page, we have similar problems. We have the formula for area, which is area equals 1/2 base times height for a triangle, or you can take your base times height and divide by 2. It's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So we could solve it out either way, depending on which formula you want to use. 1/2 base times height, it multiplies by b, and it multiplies by 1/2. So to get rid of it, you can divide by b and divide by 1/2, which is shown over here in the example. However, if you wanted to, oops, sorry about that. Okay, if you wanted to write it with the divided by 2 instead of the 1/2 fraction, we could do that one as well. So pause the video and try this. Do your do undo table and try this one. Okay, so for this, we're still solving for h, just like I said up here. So we want to see what happens to it first. On top with your h, it's got a b, so it's multiplying by b. On the bottom, it's dividing by 2. So to undo it, if we work our way up this side, dividing by 2 changes to multiplying by 2. Just do the opposite. And multiplying by b changes to dividing by b. So if we follow those steps, we should be able to solve for h. So we multiply by 2. So our 2's will cancel out on the right. 2 times a just brings down 2a. And then we divide by b. Cancels out on the right, so we're left with h. And then again, we can't simplify letters, so we just have to bring it down. So you still get the same thing we got up here. 2a over b equals h, Or you can flip it around so your h is first, like most people write, and you still get h equals 2a over b, which is what they got up here. So regardless of how you write the equation in the beginning, you're still going to get the same formula in the end. So it doesn't matter which way you write it. Okay, we're going to use the new formula to find the height of the triangle over here. So our formula that we solved for h, we want to substitute in the given information we get to find the height. So they told us the area is 10 inches squared, so we plug that in for A. The base, the B over here, is 5 over 2 inches, so we plug it in for B. And then we can either solve it out by hand, or we can plug it into our calculator, and you're going to get 8 inches if you plug it in. So this just helps us solve for equations, solve for different numbers, different values easier than having to plug it into a equals 1/2 base times height. If we solve for the letter first that we want, it's just a matter of plugging it into the calculator instead of having to solve a full equation. So we can try it with 2. You have circumference equals 2 pi r. Go ahead and try this one. Pause the video. Solve your formula for r. Do your do-undo table. And then when you're done with that, use the new formula that you have solved for r and find the radius of this circle. Okay, so for our do-undo table, over here with r, it's being multiplied by multiple things. It's being multiplied by 2 and by pi. We can take all of it at one time. You don't have to separate them up. So instead of multiplying by 2 pi, when we undo it, we're going to divide by 2 pi. So we're going to divide out both numbers. And on the other side as well. So your 2 and your pi will cancel, leave you with r. And then again, we can't simplify letters, so we just have to write it over here. Just carry it over. So once we've got our new formula, we want to find the radius for this circle. So it tells us that our C, our circumference, is 8 pi. So all we're going to do is plug it into C. So 8 pi divided by 2 pi. And then it's just a matter of plugging it in your calculator. You can plug it in your calculator, or you can work it out by hand. These pi's will cancel out, and then 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then don't forget your units. Make sure you get those. It was 8 pi centimeters, so this radius is going to be 4 centimeters. Okay, perfect. So if we go to the lesson, get my lesson out. There it is. Sorry guys, 1 second. Okay, so if we go to the lesson in your book for 1-4, we're going to go to example 1. So it says that Janet wants to calculate the time it takes to earn a certain amount of interest on a principal amount in an investment with simple interest. What equation can she use? So the equation for this is actually interest equals principal times rate times time. Your book gives that to you. We're not going to make you remember that. It gives it to you in the example. This is just the formula for interest, for simple interest. A formula is just an equation that states a relationship between one quantity and one or more other quantities. Like we have our principal, our rate, and our time. And again, your book gave you your formula. I is your interest, because that's what she's looking for. She wants to earn some interest. P is the principal, how much she's starting with. Or how much is, R is the interest rate. That's how much it's earning. And then T is your time. So we want to solve for T because it says she wants to calculate the time that it takes to earn a certain amount. So we want to find out what time is. So for this, if we make our do-undo table, for t over here, what's happening to it is got that p and r with it. That's multiplying by p and r. So to undo it, we're going to divide by p and r. And we're going to divide on both sides. So it'll cancel out p and r, leave us with t. And then we can't simplify letters because this is called a literal equation. Literal equation literally just means it's full of letters. You're going to have numbers occasionally, but most of the time it's just letters. For letters, we can't simplify these. So we just have to carry them down exactly how we saw it up here. Don't mix anything up, just carry it straight down. Perfect. Okay, so that is solved for t. All we had to do was divide out p and r. So I'm going to try it. Pause the video and try it yourself. We're going to use the same equation, but we want to calculate the principal. So in that case, we want to solve for p. So use the same equation at the top and solve for p. Okay, I hope you paused it and tried it by yourself. So for our interest equals principal times rate times time, we want to solve for p. So if we make our do-undo table, for p, it's multiplied by r and t. So to undo it, we're going to divide by r and t. Take everything out at one time. So p equals, this is a literal equation, which means it's full of letters. We can't simplify it. We just have to bring it straight down. I over r and t. And that's it, and you've solved for principal. Perfect. Okay, let's try example 2. Okay, for example 2, in half an hour, Sarah's meeting her friends at the lake, 6 miles from her house. At what average speed must she ride her bike to get there on time? So, again, your book gave you the formula. It didn't give me in the first question here, but if I hit solution, it'll show me the formula for that. Distance is just rate times time. We're going to give you these formulas. That rate right there, that's your speed. That's how fast she's going. That's what rate means. That's our miles per hour. So we want to find the average speed, which means we want to solve for r. So if we make our do-undo table, for r over here, it's being multiplied by t. So to undo it, we're going to divide by t. So if we divide by t, it'll cancel out on the right, leave us with r. And then we can't simplify letters, so we just bring it straight down, d over t. And you can flip it around if you like your variable on the left side. So either one. So that's solved for r. Now, it wants us to find the average speed. It didn't ask us just for r. It wants us to know what the actual number is. So that's why they give us numbers here. We have 6 miles from her house. That's her distance. So that's what we're going to plug in for D. And then her time, it says in half an hour. So you can plug in a half or you can plug in 0.5. I like 0.5 because it's already a fraction and I don't want to put a fraction inside of a fraction, so I'm going to use 0.5. And then you can just plug this straight into your calculator, and 6 divided by 0.5 will give you 12. Don't forget, anytime you have word problems, you need to write it with correct units. That just means what is 12. If we're solving for average speed, that's going to be her miles per hour because it had 6 miles and then half hour. So miles per hour. So you can solve for R and then plug your numbers in and put it in the calculator. Okay? For the try this one. Pause the video and try to solve the number 2. Try it. Okay, we're going to use the same formula. Distance equals rate times time. It says Sarah's going to the store 2.5 miles away. She has only 15 minutes to get there before they close. At what average speed must she ride to get to the store before they close? So again, that average speed, that's going to be rate. So we want to solve for R. So same formula we used last time. We divided by T, and we got that R equals D over T. That's not changing. We're still using that. The only thing that changed is the distance and the time. She has 2.5 miles before she can get there. So for her distance, we're going to put 2.5 miles. And then for her time, she has 15 minutes. When we're looking at time here, she's going miles per hour. So we do need to convert this. 15 minutes of an hour is 60 minutes. That's going to give us 0.25. So just 15 minutes over the full 60 minutes, that's in an hour, and we just simplify it, which will give us 0.25. Okay, and then we just plug this in our calculator. 2.5 divided by 0.25, and that's going to give us 10. But remember, when we have word problems, we have to use our correct units. So this is 10, her average speed, miles per hour. So 10 miles per hour. Perfect. Okay, example 3. For example 3, a worker at a framing store is making a rectangular frame. He knows that the perimeter of the frame is 144 inches and the length is 40 inches. How can he determine the width? So when we're looking at perimeter, to find perimeter, you're going to add all the sides. So if you look at this rectangle over here, you have a width down here, but at the top, that's also width. Because there's 4 sides, we have to make sure we get all of them. So we're going to have 2 widths, one on top, one on the bottom. And this 40 over here, it tells us the length is 40. So this is your length, which means the left side is your length as well. So we have 2 widths, and we're going to have 2 lengths. Now if you put 2L first, and then 2W, that's completely fine. It's the same exact thing. That's your commutative property, which means no matter how you add it, it's going to be the same. Just like 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 2 is 5. It doesn't matter which way you write it. So we want to find the width of the frame. So we need to solve for W. So we can make our do-undo table to solve for W. Do is what is happening to W right now. What's the closest thing to it? That's going to be 2. That's 2 times W, so it's multiplying by 2. Then what's away from it? We have that 2L. It's adding 2L. So to undo it, we're going to do the opposite. Instead of adding 2L, we're going to subtract 2L from both sides. So 2W equals, again, we can't combine these because they're not like terms, so just P minus 2L. And instead of multiplying by 2, we're going to divide by 2. So this 2 over here will cancel out, and we divide it on the other side. We can't cancel the 2's out because they don't all have 2. There's not a 2 in front of P, so it does not cancel out. We just bring it straight over. Don't change anything about it. So this is our formula solved for W. So we want to find the width. So we need to figure out what P is and what L is. Well, it told us that the perimeter is 144. So perimeter is P. So I'm going to plug in 144. And then it told us the length is 40. So we have 2 lengths because there's one on the left and one on the right. And plug in 40. All of that divided by 2. And then we just plug this formula into our calculator and let the calculator solve it for us. So when we plug it in, we're going to get 32. And again, when you have word problems, make sure you use correct units. What is the width? It's 32 what? We had 144 inches and we had 40 inches. So this is 32 inches. Make sure you get your correct units. Okay, so pause the video and try the example 3, try it, about area of a triangle. Okay, so we have the formula for area of a triangle, A equals 1/2 base times height, and we want to find it in terms of h. That just means solve for h. And then we're going to find the height with these numbers after we solve for h. So for our do, undo table, what's happening to h first? Well, it's got that 1/2 b, so it's multiplying by 1/2 and it's multiplying by b. Ooh, kind of wrote that backward. 1 second. And again, make sure you go with what's closest to it first. So it's got that b, so it's multiplying by b, then it's multiplying by 1/2. So to get rid of it, we're going to divide by both of them. For fractions, dividing fractions is taking the reciprocal, which just means you flip your fraction upside down. You multiply by the upside down fraction. So instead of multiplying by 1/2, we're going to flip it upside down and multiply by 2/1, or just a regular 2, because 2/1 is 2. And then instead of multiplying b, we're going to divide b. You can divide the fraction, but that can make your answer, that can make it harder to get your answer. So I would recommend multiplying by your reciprocal. Just means flip your fraction upside down. So instead of 1/2, I'm going to multiply by 2, which will cancel it out. And then put it on the other side. And then we got equals BH. And then instead of multiplying b, we're going to divide b. And as I've said a couple times, we can't simplify letters, so we just bring it straight down. And if you want to put h in front, you can. So that's our formula. So we need to know what the height is when a is 18 inches squared and b is 9 inches. One of the biggest mistakes we see is this squared out here. A lot of people try to carry it to the 18. It doesn't go to the 18. That's your area. That's just saying you had inches times inches. You do not carry it to your 18. That stays out there with inches. So 18 goes into A. Do not square it. And then for B, we're going to put 9. And then we just plug that into our calculator. Write it over here. 2 times 18 divided by 9 is going to give us 4. Correct units is going to be those inches up there. So 4 inches. Okay. So our last example, example 4, we're still going to solve some literal equations, so just a lot of letters. This one actually is going to have a couple numbers in it, but it still works the same way. We're still going to create our do-undo table. So according to Teo's bread recipe, he should bake the bread at 190 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. His oven measures temperature in Fahrenheit, though. So what temperature in Fahrenheit should he set his oven at? This equation, that C equals 5/9 times F minus 32. This is your equation to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So we want to know what it's going to be in Fahrenheit. So we want to solve for F. So we make our do-undo table. So what's happening to F first? What's with it? Well, I told y'all at the very beginning of the lesson, look at what's closest to F or look at your PEMDAS, your order of operations. So what's closest to F could be either one of these. If you ever have a question about it, go to PEMDAS. Parentheses first. What's inside the parentheses with F? Well, we have minus 32. After our parentheses, that's when we do the multiplying by 5 over 9. So if you ever question it, go to PEMDAS, go to your order of operations and put it in that order. To undo it, we're going to do it backward. Work your way up the table. So we can divide by 5 over 9, or again, like I said on the last problem, multiply by the reciprocal, which just means flip your fraction upside down. And then instead of subtracting 32, we're going to add 32. So multiply by 9 over 5, which will cancel it out, and bring it to the other side. And then we just bring that down. And then instead of subtracting 32, we're going to add it. So I'm going to put my F first. And again, we can't combine any of this stuff because nothing's going to be like terms. So just bring it all down. 9 over 5c, and then add that 32 to the end. So this is your formula solved for F. So we want to know what the temperature is going to be if it's already at 190 degrees, which you can get from the problem or the picture over here. So if it's 190 degrees Celsius, we're going to plug it in for C. And then we just plug this straight into our calculator. So 9 over 5 times 190 plus 32 is going to give us 374. With word problems, make sure you use those correct units. This is 374 degrees Fahrenheit because we changed it to F. We changed it to Fahrenheit. So pause the video and try example 4's try it. Okay, on the try it, we have the high temperature given on a winter day is 5 degrees Fahrenheit. What's the temperature in Celsius? So we still have the same formula we used a second ago. C equals 5 over 9 times F minus 32. And this time, it wants to know what the temperature is in Celsius. So we need to solve for C. Well, our equation's already solved for C. So we don't have to do anything to it. All we have to do is plug in 5 degrees Fahrenheit into F. So if we plug in 5 degrees and then put it straight into your calculator, we should get negative 15. With your correct units, we're going to put degrees Celsius. So on this one, it was already solved for C, so all we had to do was plug it in. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is the do you know how. So it should be on the very next page of your book, and we're going to start with number 5. So we just want to solve the literal equation for the given variable. So we have y equals x plus 12. We want to solve for x. So if we do our do-undo table, what's happening to x? Well, there's nothing with x being multiplied, but there's a plus 12 out to the side. So our undo would be the opposite, and we minus 12. So we're going to minus 12. So x equals, and we can't combine them, we just bring them straight down. Y minus 12. Or you can put x first, but it's still y minus 12. That is it. Okay, number 6. Go. For this one, we have our equation. We want to solve for m. So if we do our do-undo table, What's happening with m first? What's closest to it? So we have a 4 over 5 and we have a plus 7. When in doubt, look at PEMDAS, look at your order of operations, and do parentheses first. So in our parentheses, we have a plus 7, and then it gets to that multiplication outside, multiplying by 4 over 5. So to undo it, we want to work our way backward, divide by 4 over 5, or you can multiply by the reciprocal. Multiplying by the reciprocal tends to be easier. Remember that reciprocal is just flipping your fraction upside down. And then instead of adding 7, we're going to subtract 7. So let me write it real quick. So multiply by your reciprocal, flip it upside down, so it'll cancel out your fraction and it'll carry it to the other side. Bring it straight down because we can't combine anything. And instead of plus 7, we minus 7. So m equals, don't combine them, just bring them down, 5 over 4n, and minus 7 out to the side. And that is it. Okay, number 7. We're going to use the literal equation that we just solved for m on number 6. So they have it solved for us right here. It's the same thing we got on number 6. And we want to find m when n is 40. So all we're going to have to do is plug in 40 because we already solved for m. So we plug this into our calculator, 5 over 4 times 40 minus 7, and we should get 43. So just plug it in into your calculator. And the last one, number 8, we have 2 parts to this one. So William got a score of Q1, Q2, and Q3 on his 3 quizzes. So we need a formula for the average of all of the 3 quizzes. When you're finding average, all you have to do, it's not writing, there it goes. The average is going to be x right here. So x is going to equal, finding average, you just have to add all of your averages up, add all of your scores up. So Q1, Q2, and Q3, and you divide by how many there are. So we have 3 quizzes right there. So we're going to divide by 3. So that's your formula for A. That's your formula for your average. Add them all up and divide by however many there are. If there were 5 quizzes, we divide by 5. Okay? And then William got an 85, part B. He got an 85 and an 88 on the first 2. What formula can he use to determine the score he needs on the 3rd quiz to get an average of 90? What score does he need? So we need to find the formula for the 3rd quiz. That 3rd quiz is Q3. So we need to solve for Q3. So if we do our do-undo table, write it up here. What's happening to it first? With it up top, it's adding Q1 and Q2. On the bottom, it's dividing by 3. So to do the opposite, to undo it, work it backward. Instead of dividing by 3, we're going to multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over here. It'll cancel it out. Multiply by 3 on x, and we just get 3x. Bring everything else down. And then instead of adding Q1 and Q2, we're going to subtract Q1 and Q2. So minus Q1 and minus Q2. We can take it all out together. Cancel it. So Q3 equals, and just bring it down, your 3x minus your Q1 minus your Q2. So all of that's going to be Q3. So that's your formula for Q3, but we want to know what score does he need. So he got an 85 on the first quiz, so plug that in for the first quiz. He got an 88 on the second quiz, so both of those are being minused. And then for his average, he got a 90, so that was X, so 3 times 90. So we got 3 times his average of 90, minus the first quiz and minus the second quiz. Plug it straight into your calculator exactly how you see it, and you're going to get 97. So if he wants to get an average of 90, he has to make a 97 on his next quiz. Perfect. That's all of it. Go to the practice. Go to your textbook website and do your practice problems that were assigned to you by your teacher.